All right. Well, good morning, everyone. This is time to get started here. Just clean up my overlays. So welcome back to ElmLive. I was out of town last week, but was excited to see a few other people started streaming. And yeah, if you're interested in hearing about other people that are posting videos, you can subscribe to my Twitter. I'm trying to post those when I find new people. And also, the Elm Weekly is a great email list that you can follow. I'll try to put a link up to that at some point. Hey, good evening, Adrian in the UK. All right. So yeah, I wanted to, I guess this week is going to be a bit more of a political thing than usual, but I've personally, I'm living in the United States, and there's been a lot of stuff that you may have heard about, even if you're not in the US, about Black Lives Matter and police violence in general. And as a white male in the United States, I am maybe not the most qualified person to talk about the history and potential solutions and all that, but I've been struggling myself to try to come to terms with what productive things I can potentially do. So I figured I could try to incorporate that with programming a bit. So I want to say a couple things first. One is there is a great website out there already. I've got a link to it down in the corner called Campaign Zero. And they kind of are trying to tackle this in a way that makes a lot of sense to me, looking at how to end police violence, or at least drastically reduce it in America. They have tons of resources here about generally about policies and laws that could be passed in both federally and at the state and local levels to reduce police violence. So there's tons of great information on this website, and you can find what's local to you and all your representatives and how to contact them and all that. So I think that is a great movement in and of itself. Something I've been realizing for myself is that I don't really know a lot about police departments and how they're run and organized, so I've been trying to research that a bit. And my perspective is that I think it's really important to have good leadership. So I've been starting to look at police chiefs and sheriffs and how those positions are appointed and who they report to. So I guess that brings me to the Elm project I wanted to do today. I basically wanted to make the front end for a website that would let people kind of crowdsource information about police chiefs for different police departments, and try to have a way that people can contribute and collect and research information about who the police and or sheriff is that's responsible for the police officers in the region they live, and to keep track of whether or not those leaders have made public statements in favor of police reform to reduce police violence, or if they've made statements kind of against that position or not. And for me, I've started researching that a little bit for San Francisco recently, and realizing that I didn't know a lot about it. So yeah, I think it's a local issue that's fairly easy to get more informed about. And personally, I think knowing about that and participating in local elections can make a big difference towards who is providing leadership for the police force. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get started on that project. I definitely am interested in learning more, and if anyone either on the stream now in the chat or on YouTube later has better perspective or has information to help me expand my understanding of what really is the nature of the issue that we're facing with police violence, in particular police violence against blacks And I guess the other big issue is not holding white police officers accountable for violent action against black people is kind of the crux of Black Lives Matter. So yeah, I feel like my efforts today are just kind of like a tiny little step in hopefully the right direction. But if anyone can help me get more aligned with bigger purpose, I would love to hear feedback on that. So let's get started with an Elm project. Let me bump up the font here. So I want to do some interactive forms. Let me check on my notes here. So I'm thinking what we want to start out with, I guess let me bring up my text editor. I want to have a form where people can enter their zip code, and then from the zip code we can find out if we already have information recorded about the police department or the sheriff department that is relevant to that particular zip code. And if we don't have information about it, then we will have additional fields prompting people to enter information, starting with identifying what the police department is, who's responsible for it, and any public statements they may have made with respect to police violence, police reform, and racism. So let's see. So starting with entering zip code, entering police department information, entering police chief information, entering public statements. Cool. So that's our to-do list for today. Oh yeah, and as always, I'm trying to keep track of my network connectivity and my microphone, so if anything seems weird, please just let me know in the chat. So we're going to get started running Elm make as usual. And let's call this form.elm. And we'll start out with an empty form. And let's see, I want to start Elm Reactor. And let's load this up. All right, so we've got our form there. Oh yeah, so one new thing I also wanted to do today was my goal is also to make this form somewhat presentable where we could publish it on a live website. So I don't want to just be like sticking ugly inputs and text fields in here. So I'm also going to hook up some CSS. So a lot of people use Bootstrap. I think I'm going to try to use the pure CSS library, which has some nice forms. So we'll have to go through how to have a custom HTML page that includes our Elm JavaScript. So that'll be a new thing that I haven't done on the stream yet. So let's start. We're going to have a zip code, and we're not going to start out with it. So let's start by defining our data model. Type alias model. And zip code is going to be a maybe string. And I guess we'll also have to do some validation of zip codes. Oh yeah, Adrian in the chat is suggesting Elm MDL, which is a material design library. I actually want to hold off on that for today. I do want to try using Elm MDL in the future, but it kind of has some weird patterns in the way you hook things up. So I'm hoping that eventually there will be a nicer Elm-based UI component library, or that Elm MDL will get some refactorings to make the patterns nicer. But we'll definitely take a look at it at some point. But also, a lot of people on projects have custom CSS they need to integrate, or integrate with other websites. So I think it's worthwhile showing how to do that as well. Okay, so we're going to have our zip code, and for now, this is going to be our view function. It's going to take a model. I guess I want to expose everything in our HTML package. And we'll need our message type, which is nothing yet. We'll come back to defining actions later. And then our main is going to be a program. Well, okay, we'll get to the program in a minute. For now, I just want to call the view with an initial model. And we will define our initial model. And we'll start out with no zip code. All right, so in this case, we want to show an input box. And let people enter the zip code. So if we have model, actually we can just hard code this for the moment. So we're going to have an input. All right, there's our input. We can have, let's see, I'm blanking on my HTML at the moment. Is there a placeholder attribute? Attributes exposing. And let me just look this up real quick. Yeah, just placeholder. Okay, so that should be coming from the attributes package. Zip code. Okay, so there's our placeholder. And then we want to let people type on here. So let's hook this up. And I always forget the name of the event, so let's just look it up real quick. In package, in the Elm HTML package, in events. On input. Okay, great. And we also want to, oh, it uses target value internally. Okay, so we just need to provide a function that takes a string and returns a message. Great. So let's first define the message we're going to have. Zip code changed, which takes a string. Then we'll have on input, which comes from our events module. And then we'll use this tag as a function, which takes a string and returns a message. All right. So now that we want to respond to this message, we need to convert our main from being static HTML into a program. So this comes from HTML app. And we don't have any external specs yet. So we can still use the beginner program. Model equals initial model. Update equals update, which we're about to write. And view equals our view function. Then we need to make our update function, which takes a message and a model and returns the new model. And And I like to generally put debugging in here when I start, just so we can see what's happening. All right, let's try this out. And I forgot to import html.app. Okay, so here's our form. Let me bring up the inspector and see if we're getting events. Okay, we are getting events. Maybe the next thing we should do is validate our zip code. So let's try that. So here's what we want to do. We want to show this is in error when we have an invalid zip code, which is basically anything that's not 5 digits. All right. So let's write a function. Actually, why don't we make a new zip code module to do this? Zipcode.elm. We'll call this isValid. All right, so we'll have a couple things. If string.length of zip code is not equal to 5, and I guess we're only allowing short zip codes for now, then false, else. And we're also going to need else if, and we need to check if they're all numbers. I think there's an all function on the string. Let's check. In core, string is empty, reverse, repeat, and concat, join line, contains, starts with, ends with. Map filter. Okay. Is there a special? Here we go. All. Oh, and in fact, they even have an example showing us how to do this. Great. Okay, so we'll say string.all is digit. And is digit a function in the character package? Let's check. In core, there is digit. Okay, great. So we have all these functions we can compose. Yeah, Adrian in chat is suggesting regular expressions. I think that's kind of overkill for this. String.all character.isDigit, and then the string zip code. Otherwise, we return false. All right. And I forgot a then. Cool. So now we need to import zip code and check. I'm just going to put this in the view temporarily. Make a div here. And yeah, I already imported, or I exposed everything in HTML, so we don't need to say HTML dot anymore. And then we'll say if zip code dot is valid model dot zip code, which is not directly going to work because zip code is a maybe. Zip code 1 or 2 words. I'm going to say it's 1 word. Then if it's valid, okay, then great. We're just going to have text. And if it's not valid, we'll just put this for now, and in a second we'll switch to using CSS to highlight things. Yeah, LeBron in chat is saying I didn't import string and character. That is true. I was waiting for the compiler to give me an error here. Which, first of all, we need to import zip code. And great, now we're getting the errors in zip code because it's compiling that. And in Elm it's a slash equals, not bang equals. And now we need to import string, as LeBron was saying. And we need to import character. Yeah, I'm used to doing a lot of TDD, so in Elm I tend to do error-driven development, where I'm letting the compiler tell me the next step. And okay, in Vue, here is what I was mentioning earlier. Zip code is a maybe string, but I didn't deal with the maybe in the if statement. So actually I think we're going to want to show different things in the form. Oh, well no, I guess what we really want is a temporary field which holds the data that is currently typed into the field. And then the zip code is only going to be the valid zip code once we've submitted this portion of the form. So actually, I think we want a separate field. This will be zip code entry, which is always going to be a string. And it'll start out as the empty string. Then here, this is zip code entry. And we also want to show, make sure we sync up this input with that value. So zip code entry is gonna be always the value of the input. Okay, not valid. And let's see, as I'm typing, we didn't implement our update function, so zip code entry is always empty. So let's deal with that. So in our update function, we need to handle this message type. New entry is what I'm going to call the string. And we'll change model and update the zip code entry to be the new entry. And it should actually complain that this is redundant. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm just going to get rid of this fallback case. Okay, and now I can type. Those are all invalid, and I can put numbers, and that one's okay. Great. Cool. So that looks like a good start for entering the zip code. I think the next thing I want to do is add our CSS, and then instead of just saying okay or not valid, we can actually highlight it with a nice style to give it an error border. So let's check this out. I wanted to try using pure, which is similar to Bootstrap, but kind of markets itself on being smaller and more straightforward. Like there's a lot fewer components in here. So let's go to the get started, and we need to insert this line of HTML. So to do that, we're going to have to stop letting Elm make our HTML file and instead make our own custom HTML. And let's see, I think somewhere down here there's actually some example layouts. I'm just going to grab this sample blog layout and use that as our HTML template. Let's see, can I bring this over to Atom somehow? Whoops. Open with, there we go. Okay. So let's grab this HTML. We will make our own HTML file, call it form. Save that. And this is using the online version of Pure, great. And they're using grids. Okay. I'm going to assume all that boilerplate is good. Let's try opening this up. And all right. So we got a lot of stuff. The responsive stuff is working here, it looks like. And we're missing this layouts.blog CSS. What does that look like? You're not going to let me open it? Open. So I guess this has a bunch of colors and things in it. All right, let's just grab this for the moment. We'll make form CSS. And then go back to the HTML file and find where we were referring to blog. I'm not going to worry about IE for the moment. And then this is just going to be form.css. Okay. Here we go. We've got our template layout. So now that we have this, we don't really need any of this HTML. Let's just delete all that. We can get it from that template file if we need it later. Then we need to start Elm on this file. So we're going to have to load a JavaScript file that the Elm compiler will produce, and then add a little script tag in here to initialize Elm. So I haven't done this in a while, so I'm going to go to guide.elmlang.org, and there's a section at the bottom in this interop section with HTML. So it's saying, first of all, we'll change our Elm make command to specify an output file to produce the JavaScript file. Then we're going to add a script tag, and it looks like they're recommending just sticking this into the body. Hey chickens, welcome to the stream. So let's try sticking this in our body in here. So I'm just going to call this main as the ID. We're going to load form.js, which will compile in a moment. Then this refers to the ID where we want the Elm program to appear. Oh, actually, we don't even need the div because I want this to be a full screen Elm app. So we're going to say elm.main full screen. All right, so if we try this now, first of all, we need to compile our form.js. So I'm going to run elm make with form.elm and tell it an output file. form.js. Now we should be able to load that, and it should run our app full screen. Oh, right, and I'm not running Elm Reactor anymore. Let me start that in a background window. Great. That actually looks good. So I think, let's see, if we look at, oh, this window is so tiny. So we have our body, we have the header in particular. Great, and yeah, here's all of the pure CSS stuff loaded. So I think everything is working properly. We have our custom HTML file. We load from our, we compile our Elm into a JavaScript file. We load that, and then we call elm.main. Main is the name of the entry point module, and say full screen, and it'll start up the app. Cool. So let's make sure this is working by trying to use the pure forms and see if we get the styling. So it looks like they make a form with class pure form. They put a field set. Then they have an input box. Actually, let's see. There's a couple different types of forms. They have an inline form, they have a stacked form, and they have an aligned form. I think I want to use this aligned form. So we do it like this. I'm just going to copy this over, and we will translate this into Elm. So here's our Elm view. And here's the code we copied from the pure documentation. Oh, interesting. Inikifi in chat is mentioning that there is a helper library for using Pure in Elm. Let's go check that out. Set of helpers for Pure CSS. Ooh, and there's a bunch of form stuff. Okay, let's look in here and see if this gives us what we want. Form aligned. What does this actually do? Does this just give us the classes? Attributes class. Huh, interesting. And then class list, and it has the specific classes. Huh, that's kind of cool. And then you get an input. How do you use input? Cool. I think I'm going to just do this manually for the moment, but this might be worth coming back to later when we start doing more fields. So thank you, Ben the Poet, for publishing that module. So let's see how we'll do this, how we would do this manually first, and if we have time later, we can look at converting it over to this library. Let's see, why does Adam keep popping up all of these shortcuts? All right, so we're gonna have a form. This has a class, this stuff, and in that form we have a field set, no attributes, and in that field set we have a div of class pure control group, and in that div we have a label, which has a 4. And this is going to be our zip code. And then in there we have text, zip code. And then we have our input, which has an ID of zip code matching the 4 in the label. Type, which is the function in HTML, is type prime because the word type is a keyword. Type is text, and placeholder. I guess we don't really need a placeholder because we have the label on the field. And there's no children in the input. Okay, that might be enough. Now, let's see, I forgot which window I was in. All right. So now I need to recompile this. And form is ambiguous. Yes, okay. So we want html.form. Great. That looks good. So I think we're done with all that stuff. And I want to commit this. And let's see. I also want to set this up so that this will rebuild all the time. So one problem with using custom HTML is that Elm Reactor won't automatically rebuild your Elm file anymore because you're loading the HTML file rather than the Elm file directly, so it doesn't know when it needs to recompile. So let's see. I found a little command line script we can use to do that for us. So let's see. What we need is we're going to git ignore Elm stuff and the form.js, because that's a build product from compiling. And form.js. And then we'll add everything else. Working zip code field. Cool. And that should be pushed up online in the very bottom right corner. There's a link to the code. Hopefully that works. Let me know if it doesn't. And yeah, Greg Segan in the chat is mentioning there is an HTML to Elm thing online. HTML to Elm, yeah. Where you can actually just type in some HTML. Let's see if we took this example, copied it, pasted in here. It just turns it into Elm code over on the right side. So that's probably useful for a lot of people. Let me add that to the README in here. So yeah, if we have some big components we need to convert, I'll use that later on. All right, so where are we at? We have our working zip code form. We want to make it show the validation, or basically like turn red when we have an invalid zip code. So how do they do this? This is type email. Turns red when there's no email in it. We want to use our custom email or our custom zip code validation. So hopefully there's a way we can get that style applied. Let's inspect this. requires email. So when I type and it turns red, where does that red come from? Huh, I'm not actually sure how they do that. We might need to add that ourselves. If anyone knows Pure and knows how to, if there's a class that we can add to the input to show the red error state, you know. Let me search for that real quick. Pure CSS. Input red. Valid and invalid. Pure CSS invalid input class. Yeah, okay. I don't see that specifically. Mikey VIP says it's the focus class. Let's see. We turn on focus. Oh, there we go. And it's pure.form. So it looks like they don't have any other ways of activating this. But what's interesting is if you type a valid email, it goes blue. I haven't actually seen that in CSS before, so I don't know how that works. Let's see. Here's another link from Mikey. Invalid selector allows you. Yep. What's interesting is that the Chrome inspector doesn't let us turn on invalid. Okay, in any case, we've got the CSS we need here, so let's just make a quick little class in our own CSS. We will say input invalid. Stick this in here. And then we'll add this class to our field when we think it's invalid. So here's our control group, class, label on the input. Okay. And let's see, I think there's also a helper in ElmHTML for doing multiple classes. Class list. So this lets us pass a list of classes with booleans, and it will only include each class if the boolean is true. So that sounds good. We want to include the input invalid class if the zip code is not valid. Oh shoot, I guess I deleted the code that did that earlier. Zip code is valid. Model.zipcode entry is what we're checking. And we want to do a not of that. Okay, let's see if this works. So I want to recompile, then reload, and it looks like the color changed. Let's see, how do I make this panel go to the right side of the window? Nope. Nope. Well, okay, maybe that'll be good enough. Find this. Input. And here's input. Okay, so this is just coming too late. These other things are overriding it. Let's see if we can make this more specific. Still doesn't work. Okay, let's check what order the CSS is being loaded in. This is happening later. I think this probably won't make a difference, but let's try sticking this before pure. Nope, okay. So I guess we have to make our rule more specific. It's fun CSS stuff. So let's inspect this again. So the input, it's inside of .pure form. Okay, so in our CSS, we put pure form .input invalid. See if that works. Nope, still not specific enough. Because also it's an input of type text and then all those different things. Ugh, that's going to be a mess. But let's just stick this in. Okay, there we go. We got a more specific rule, but not the most fun. So maybe I'm learning that pure is not the best library to use. You maybe should have used Bootstrap, but oh well. Okay, so we've got our input, and then if I type a valid zip code, oops, something is not working. Oh yeah, we forgot to put our event listener onto this new input field. Oops. So here's our new input. We need to put our onInput handler, and whenever we get a new input, we're going to send the zip code changed event. And I forgot to recompile. So, okay, let me find this command to automatically recompile. There's this command called fswatch, which you can install with brew, and I think they have it for Linux and Windows also. This will just watch files you tell it and print their name out whenever they change, and then xargs is then going to run elmmake. I'm sure there's nicer setups than that, but okay, so now every time I save, it's going to recompile. Now I can just refresh. Let's see. And I'm still missing something. On input, the zip code changed. Oh, it produced, my command here is wrong. I want this to produce form.js. I'll save. Okay, so now it's compiling to form.js. And we're getting updates. And great, when I put a valid thing in, it changes to blue. Cool. Cool. Thanks, Adrian. I figured that out. Yeah, I think the chat delay is like around 30 seconds or so. But good job for figuring it out before I did. All right. Well, let's see. I think I need to take a quick break and get a drink of water. Let me commit this first. So now we've got a bunch of stuff running. We've got Elm Reactor is running. We've got FS Watch recompiling the JavaScript for us, since Elm Reactor won't do that when we have custom HTML. And what else did we do here? So we switched to the new input type, and we added CSS to work around the problem in Pure. Cool. Styling input with Pure CSS. Cool. So we've done a lot of the setup work and gotten our CSS loaded, gotten kind of the infrastructure and the skeleton of everything set up. So we can enter a zip code. We've added the CSS. So, all right, so we're not going to do a backend today, although I do want to work on that in a future stream. But for now, basically what would happen once someone enters a zip code is it would look up on a server somehow whether or not there's information already entered for that zip code. And if there isn't, then they'll be prompted to add more information. So I think we're just going to need to define the API for what that would look like, and we'll kind of hard code some server responses in, simulating what data is happening on the server, and we can build out the form in the front end for all of this. So cool. I'm going to take a short, maybe 5-minute break. I'll be on chat in a couple minutes towards the end of that. And when we come back, we will take what we have. We'll probably extract a few helper functions to make these input fields more easily, and go ahead and add some logic for these extra sections. And specifically, we're going to have a couple fields where like you can add multiple items for a particular field. So yeah, that sounds good. And I will be back in a few minutes.